Mansions of Madness, a second edition, a game that was presented at Gen Con 2016. One of these fantasy flight games that come in big, heavy boxes. This is the size of the box for Star Wars Rebellion or Star Wars Imperial Assault. And there's some air in here, but not much. This is a game that has a lot of goodies, a lot of toys in it. Terrain tiles, lots of beautiful plastic miniatures, a lot of fun stuff. A lot of toys in here and a game too. About the game, we are in Lovecraft land. Lovecraftian themes and atmospheres have worked very well in pen and paper RPGs, but especially in board games. Doesn't mean that most board games out there have a Lovecraftian theme, but it seems to me that it's in board games that Lovecraftian themes have been particularly successful and that they thrive more than elsewhere. We don't have many video games with Lovecraftian themes as far as I know. Some ideas here and there, but it is really with board games that it is fun to deal with cultists and other horrors that are trying to break into our reality. In this game, players take on the role of investigators that are looking into all sorts of mysteries, exploring iconic Lovecraftian locations such as Innsmouth, and they are in danger of being slaughtered, murdered, and also they're in danger of becoming insane because of the toll that Lovecraftian horror takes on the human mind. There's a second edition. The first edition I didn't play, but from what I had heard, starting from back then, people had a sort of like love-hate relationship. They liked the idea, they liked the story-heavy approach, the narrative element in it, the sense of exploring mysterious, gloomy, dark, eerie locales and solving puzzles and putting clues together, but there were some aspects of it that I heard were pretty burdensome to play, and also it was a game in the first edition that required an overlord, a narrator, dungeon master, call it whatever you like, a figure that sort of like manages the story, that knows all the secrets, and that in a two-player game, it's a PvP situation. Otherwise, it's everybody ganging up against that player. That is sort of like a limited dungeon master. A dungeon master in role-playing games, at least, is omnipotent. Here, a narrator, that kind of figure in a board game is still constrained by the limitations of the design. And so there's more like adversarial, there's more of an adversarial situation, as that figure usually is trying to win, as opposed to dungeon master narrating on a role-playing game that is trying to tell you a story or tell a story or build a story together with other players. Maybe that's why that figure works much better in role-playing games than it does in board games. So at least there are groups that really do not react well to that sort of situation. It seems that concern was finally addressed by Fantasy Flight Games, because the second edition is not just a reprint, is not just a beautified version, it's not like you have in some cases the second edition is just a cosmetic remake of the first one. Oh, no. This is a intense and deep redesign, because now the game works in combination, synergy with an app that simply manages the role of the narrator. Yes, you do need to download that app, but if I can do it, so can you. And I'm very technologically non-savvy. I am the opposite of technologically savvy, and I was still able to use the app. So it's very easy, very intuitive, even a semi-troglodyte such as myself can use it, and the app will tell you the story. So now the game can be played in solitaire, can be played in a fully cooperative mode. Your group controls the investigators, and the app will tell you about the locales that you explore, the areas that you encounter, the behavior of the people that you encounter, and it will give you options, conversation menus when you're encountering, when you're dealing with a character, you're trying to extrapolate, so to extract some information, then you have to choose, so to like choose your own adventure situation. In some of the cases, you're given several options. Again, the app knows all the secrets, and you're struggling to unveiling them, to unravel those secrets. Really fun idea. And finally, the game can be played in much more flexible ways by pretty much any group, because I don't know any group that really dislikes cooperative mode. And again, you can also play solo when no one is around. Mansions of Madness 2nd edition. Let's take a closer look. The game is scenario based, so the players will need to choose the investigation that they want to play, that they want to attempt. Each player then will control a hero, an investigator. Each hero is represented by a miniature to indicate the position of the character on the board, as well as a card with the stats of the characters. The character has a number of health points and sanity points. Probably you can already guess that if you take a number of hits equal to or higher than your health, or if you take a number of horror cards equal to or higher than your sanity, things are going to be bad for you. Each character has a special ability described on the card, and then each character has stats for a set of abilities that are used during tests. Tests are an important concept in the game. Many times, or most of the times that you attempt to do something and you're not sure whether or not the character will be able to perform the thing, as every time that it's not an automatic thing, you need to take a test. How do tests work? You pick up a number of dice which is equal to the ability that you're testing. Maybe you're trying to observe something, so you're with observation. You're trying to decipher a code, so you use lore. Maybe you're using a heavy weapon, then it's going to be strength, or you're trying to dodge, so it's going to be agility. You take the number of dice of the ability that you're trying to test, which can be modified by game effects, and you roll the dice. Each elder sign that you roll is a success. Each clue is a conditional success. It is a success if you also spend a clue token pretty much to count it as an elder sign, or there are the game effects, and there are several that allow you to count clues as successes. The tests usually will have a difficulty, which is a number of successes that you need to roll when all is said and done to pass the test. And there are tests that work in slightly different ways, but this is the main idea. Now, as we said, here you have the characters, and you need to choose a scenario, and then you need to launch the app of the game on some form of, digital support of technology. Here I'm using my iPhone, and suppose we're starting a new game, so I simply click on that button here, new game, and I select a scenario. There are 4 possible scenarios: Cycle of Eternity, Rising Tide, which is very long and complex. It has several sections. It's my favorite one, but definitely pretty demanding. Shattered Bonds and Escape from Innsmouth. And suppose that we decide to play Cycle of Eternity, then you select the investigators. We're gonna go in with these investigators here, and then you gain starting items. The app tells you the cards that represent items that you will use, or abilities, spells, various type of things. And like in other games, such as Arkham Horror, you have these decks of small cards representing upgrades, things that the characters acquire during the game. Some are common items, some are unique items, spells, characteristics, status, etc., etc. Speaking of decks, you also will have a deck of horror cards, and you also have a deck of hits or physical hits. When you receive damage, you take 1 and you put it face down by your card. That indicates that you took a hit. However, there's also another side. There are game effects that will force you to flip the card face up, and when you do so, there may be other negative effects that apply. So the basic hit is a card face down, and the basic horror, that is a basic unit of loss of sanity, is a horror card face down. And again, flipping them face up due to game effects is usually bad. But where were we? Where were we? Oh yes, we were talking about the items that you receive. So you take the cards that will represent the items and the spells and the stuff that you get, and you distribute it among the carters. And then it's time to continue setup. To continue setup, you press that button and then you wait expectantly as this is very suspenseful loading phase. Click begin scenario. And you have an introduction of what the scenario does. We're gonna skip a little bit so you don't have too much of a spoiler. And this is how things will work in general. The app will show you a room or an area in which the players are, the characters are. I will give instructions about how to set up. So you will take among these terrain tiles the ones that correspond to the locale described in the app, like we have in this case here. You will add other terrain features, or other features can be, extra walls, and extra painting there that covers a door, or extra doors. Here we have another painting there that covers this is the door here. You step into the warmth of the house, etc., etc. So this is where the characters enter. We're told to place them there. We continue with setup. In the middle of the lobby sits a table with a small pile of papers. Place a search token there. These tokens indicate, oh man, every time that I look at this, then it messes up the light and everything looks like orangish. But what can you do? The app tells us where to place those search tokens that represent places of possible interest. So we keep setting up. We got another search token there. Oh, a lot of interesting things here, potentially. And then we have the exploration tokens, indicate areas that the players can gain access to by interacting with them, with the exploration token. And here we go. Investigator phase. Each turn is divided in two phases, an investigator phase and a mythos phase. During the investigator phase, the players get to activate their characters, and each character can perform up to 2 actions. Common actions are to move or to, for another action, interact with one of the tokens on the board. We have search tokens, so that will be the search action, exploration tokens, so that will be the explore action. Then there may be a bit of tokens that are the interaction tokens. They are more situational. Suppose, for example, that my guy here decides to search that pile of stuff. So he's already there, so he doesn't need to move, so simply spends an action to interact with that token. What is on that token? Well, to figure it out, we're going to press that button, and we are told that there is a disheveled pile of papers that sits on the table. Do you want to search? Why, yes, but I'm not going to tell you what's there. I just want to give a sense of how it works. So you read what it says, you get some extra information. Sometimes you will have some decisions to make, and then you press continue. And that's it, the character resolved their action. Oh, mini spoiler, I guess, the action resulted in the removal of this, maybe simply because the character picked up something, or maybe it was something irrelevant. And then, say, for my second action, I decide to move there. This is a character then moves and does 1 and 2. Actually, you know what we're gonna do? Yeah, 1 and 2. Goes there and uses her second action to interact with the token. So we press the token. Why isn't it working? There you go. The door leads deeper into the mansion. Want to explore? Yeah, sure, fine. And then we are told about other terrain tiles that we need to add. Again, like we have here, possible other tokens, possible people. There may be other characters that will be encountered. And in which case, again, the app will tell us where to put them. You can spend an action to interact with the people, and sometimes you get into conversation. That's like choose your own adventure. That is, you need to decide what to say next. And depending on what you say, you will have different reactions. and so on and so forth. So the players will go around the board, and the board will increase in size and complexity, all based on the instructions received by the app. There are all sorts of interactions that will be determined by the app. And then finally, when the players are done with their turn, there will be a mythos phase. A mythos phase is when the AI of the board attempts to do bad stuff to you. In Arkham Horror, in other games that have an analog AI, you need to draw cards, and there is sometimes pretty laborious procedure that you have to go through to determine all the things that the non-playing bad guys attempt to do. Here things are much simpler, because once you're done taking your turn with your characters, you simply press here, and then you're asked, are you sure? End of the investigator phase. Well, yes. And that is followed by the mythos phase, which again is completely handled by the AI, by the app. All you need to do is press continue when there's a text, and I'm trying not to share too much stuff, and resolve the effects that are described there. We talk about tests. A type of test is, of course, a fight against the monsters. Boom. Now that would be a pretty... Oopsie. Oh, guy fell from its base. I guess I need to use some glue. So there may be monsters, there may be all sort of enemies and bad guys on the board. When that is the case, the app will give you an option. You click on the monster, and the app will give you the option of evading from the monster or attacking the monster. If you attack the monster, you're given a list of options that cover the possible means to attack. Maybe you're attacking unarmed, or using a bladed weapon, a heavy weapon, a ranged weapon, a firearm. So you choose the category that applies, and the app will give you a general description of the action, of the scene that the characters are taking part in, and will give you the type of test that you need to take and the number of successes that you need to produce to be, guess what, successful. So that means, for example, that if you're using a heavy weapon, probably you will need to test the strength. If you're using a ranged weapon, probably agility or observation, maybe you're shooting in the dark. So the app will tell you what type of skill you need to test, and then also based on other factors, environmental factors, what type of damage you deliver. As simple as that. In most cases, just like follow the instructions of the app. And this is really what the game is about. Take your turns, performing your actions, perform the actions that the app describes in the mythos phase, repeat until either you complete the investigation successfully, or alas, either the investigators die or they meet some other standard condition that triggers a defeat, or based on the story, the investigation fails because of, well, I cannot tell you because of what. That would be a big spoiler. Continue to play until either you win or you lose. It's pretty much as simple as that. I was a little skeptical at the beginning because I like board games more than I like video games, and the idea of using an app to me almost felt like a betrayal of board gaming philosophy. I like board games, I like the physical components, I like manipulating the components, I like the direct interaction with people. I stare into screens long enough every day, and I like board games as a break from that. But it worked. All of my possible doubts that I had at the beginning were completely dispelled by how fun the game is, how well the digital element works with the physical components, how immersive and seamless the experience is. I like stories, I like board games that tell stories, and this one is second to none. This has to be one of the most successful story engines that I've ever seen in a board game. Or it's not a story engine in a board game. The board game is the story engine. The board game tells an amazing story, and you really have the sense of a universe, of a setting that you're discovering. The app does an excellent job of giving you this sense of progressive revelation, of dispensing new content little by little as you proceed in the story. and you won't be able with some of the stories to be able to explore everything that you want in a single session, so you have tough decisions. The app takes care of presenting you with new information, new encounters, but also keeping track of time, so giving you a limited amount of time to accomplish certain things, and that also adds some replay value, as next time you will try and discover different clues and interact with different people and explore different areas. But the sense of immersion is unbelievable. I mean, this is a masterpiece in that. I like immersive experiences, and it's really like an almost virtual experience. To me, somehow, it's even stronger than staring at a screen of a video game, first person shooter, first person whatever. There's a visceral element there, but somehow here manipulating physical components. Although I was moving around miniatures that weren't me. Yet I have an incredible sense of being there, being part of the story. That the app does a very good job of not just delivering the meaning, giving you the information you need to play the game, but really creating or enhancing the atmosphere. Thanks to the music, the art, the graphics. I thought that the music, the creepy music, would be a little gimmicky before I started playing it. Then I just got so much into the story that I forgot about the fact that the music, the soundtrack was there, and I simply was benefiting from the emotional involvement, the enhancement that it created. It was so immersive that sometimes I would tap on the tokens, on the actual tokens on the table rather than the tokens on the app. That's how interchangeable the two of them were. Or that's how the two of them, the app, the digital element and the physical element, became part of a virtual RPG type of experience. And the sense of story is so strong. I mean, playing here mysteries really, it's not like Clue where there are mechanics that are very abstract and there's a pasted on mystery thing. Yeah, you really have to put together the clues. You really have to think of the setting of the story like a real place that you're exploring. You have to think of the pawns on the board as real characters, and you have to ask yourself why the character told me that, and why is the character is in that place rather than that other. The fact that the story has been scripted before, that it has a plot, that the clues make sense, really creates an intellectual challenge for you. And the scenarios play in different ways. You have some scenarios that are more traditional, in the sense more adventures. There is more of a balance between and clues, mysteries to solve and clues to collect, and clues to interpret, and fights. In other scenarios where you won't fight much, it really is about a sort of like intellectual challenge or classic golden age mystery, with however the threat of a horror that looms over everybody. And I cannot tell you much about that, but let's just say there are more fight action oriented scenarios and some other ones that are more like contemplative scenarios, with the possibility however of some intense showdowns at the end. Did I say too much? I don't know. It's unbelievable. It is one of the best, if not the best story-based, narrative-heavy, narrative-centered game that I ever played. It's almost not a board game anymore. To call it literature would be a disservice to board gaming. It would be like to say, well, board games can't tell stories, so as long as it betrays its nature and it becomes literature, then it can be allowed into the Olympus of true art. No, it is not. It's not a board game that stops being a board game to tell a story. It somehow it does transcend that, because it delivers the amount of storyness, of vividness, of emotional, psychological appeal that you find from literature, but it does that through board gaming. So it is a board game that is as good as literature at telling a story, with the advantage of doing so in an interactive way, and by doing so in ways that are unique to board gaming, through the physical components, through the visual appeal that you have, the tactile appeal. It's great. It is a board game that tells a story as well as literature would do, and it does so by still being something that you can play, that you can enjoy. One thing, if I had to say one minor negative thing is that I expected more scenarios. I expected more scenarios in the story, in the box, or in the app, I should say. And this is both because these days when you have scenario based games, you expect 6, 7, 10 scenarios. That's almost standard. And with the components that you have in here, there are just so many more stories that could be told. Yeah, you have 4 stories, 4 scenarios, and sure, one is particularly long and is divided in mini scenarios, but still I expected more stuff. But in truth, the other reason why I wanted more is because the game is so good. So it's also a good thing that I didn't feel the 4 scenarios were enough. Had I had 10, maybe I would have felt that 10 would not be enough. So maybe more scenarios will be released. In the app, you can add more scenarios, you can download more stuff. I hope so. Maybe players will come up with their own scenarios and they will be released maybe in analog form or analogable, meaning maybe players or Fantasy Fly will come up with choose your own adventure type of texts where you have a page that tells you about, well, the room where you start, and then if you interact with that exploration token, go to page 24. If you interact with that explore token, read paragraph 48. And so you can still do it in a similar way. After all, the AI that controls the board could be automatized also in an analog form, in a textual form, not necessarily an app. You will lose the music, you'll lose the graphic, but it could be done. One way or the other, I want more stories. I want more stories for Mansions of Madness. Uh, Second edition, because I had such an amazing blast playing it. So I want more. It is a negative thing that we don't have more, but again, it is a sign that the game is just so amazing. It's not cheap, it's not inexpensive, but it is a truly remarkable game that I think everybody in the world should play. Especially, I work in academia, special colleagues of mine that have still a somewhat outdated idea what the narrative is or what the story is. I like to show them how just thinking of storytelling as literature and maybe as film is a very limited way of doing it, of interpreting the richness that storytelling is. We are a storytelling species, we human beings, is a great gift to our species, and there's just such a richness, a variety of ways in which great stories can be experienced and created, and Mansions of Madness is just an example of how many ways there are to tell amazing, compelling, immersive stories that work differently and are experienced differently based on the medium. Board games can tell great stories, and Mansions of Madness can do it in ways that no other board games that I know can.